Karen Roberts, welcome to the show. We got a great Poduty in the News coming. This is a Saturday morning show, so we do coffee with Poduty and the crew. And after this episode, Karen is officially inducted into the Poduty crew. Poduty and the crew. Check out the website, news.poduty.com. You'll see the crew at the top of the page. That's everybody who's ever been on the show, along with links to the shows they've appeared on and links to all their social profiles, their websites, their businesses. And make sure you support the people who are coming on here. Karen, all the way, you said you were in Mexico this morning. How's it going?
Yeah, I am. I mean, as you can hear, I am from England. I'm from London, but yeah, London's pretty cold. It's pretty dull in the winter. So I'd told my daughters a few years ago I wasn't going to do another winter in England. So yeah, I'm here in Mexico.
Oh, what a great place to spend the winter. How's it going so far?
Loving it. Why didn't I do this sooner?
You don't miss the snow and the rain and the freezing cold?
Not at all.
Well, as everybody knows at home, we got 6 great stories coming your way about live podcasting. This is a live show about live podcasting. We record it live. It's a very meta concept, very high level. Right? We touch all the bases on this show. And that means I only have one question for my guests going into the show. Karen, do you know what time it is?
It's showtime.
What time is it? What time is it? It's time for Poduty and the News. Poduty and the News. The only live news podcast about podcasting from the stage. Poduty and the News. Poduty and the News. The only live news podcast about podcasting from the stage.
Oh, there we go. I'm on the stage. I had to do a little transition, a little sneakiness. I grabbed my coffee. I grabbed my glasses. I grabbed my show notes. I'm buried in stuff on the stage right now. I'm so excited. Karen and I had a great conversation before the show. We were hanging out for about 10, 15 minutes, laughing, telling stories about podcasting. And Karen's got a great concept, Podcast Profits Unleashed. It's a little bit of a podcast, a little bit of consulting. Karen, tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, where do I start? You see, I did this fear of bankruptcy, shall I say, and being stubborn, because I've had my podcast for 5 years and I started in radio. I had a radio show. That's how it started. And the owner of the radio station offered it to me one year. And I just went, yeah, that sounds cool. Didn't have any idea of what I was doing. At the same time, I launched a podcast network and I was just like, hey, you want a show? There you go. And I wasn't giving any guidance or anything. And I don't know about you, but I think the stats are so true. 90% of podcasters don't make it past 3 episodes. And out of the 10% that do, 90% don't make it past 20. And I got that because my business was failing. And it got to the point where I was like, if things don't change, I'm going to be bankrupt by the end of the year. So I went into this not really with a plan, but from, I don't want this to end because I love doing my podcast. So I needed to sort of reverse engineer, if you like. Well, why are other people giving up and I'm not? Mine's growing. What's going on? So I decided to I realized the problem was me. I needed to own it and I wasn't doing enough. I was just going, hey, there you go. So I needed to coach them more. We went more into podcast production, but still, people were giving up because they were finding it overwhelming. And so what I was doing for my own podcast, I was trying to coach my own guests on how to show up on my podcast, show up and shine, if you like. And I was like, well, maybe I can do this for others. And so that's what we really focus on now. I still have my podcast network. We still do podcast production, but we focus more on helping people guest on shows, how to share their system origin story, if you like, and do it in a way that hopefully drives business their way. So that's how I ended up here. It was without a clear plan from the beginning, but a stubbornness to refuse to give up, I think.
I love that strategy. I love showing people the benefits of podcasting and guesting on other shows. There's nothing that opens up your world more than finding people like you who have the same interests, the same passions, and then you start interacting with these other creators about doing the thing. It's such a great way to expand your sphere, make new connections, maybe even make new business opportunities.
100%. It's like, when people go networking, right? They might have a minute spiel, right? They have their elevator pitch. I wasn't that keen on networking, but I understood the concept because everybody has this title, right? They have this title, which doesn't necessarily mean much to people, or people create this idea in their own mind of what that person does. And the elevator pitch in a networking event, you might go, oh, that's what it is. Well, a podcast expands on that because you're having just authentic conversations. And by the end of it, your perception's completely changed about what this particular person does, right?
Yeah, because you have, what I tell people is you only have your perspective of the world, your perception of the world. And even though you may have the same interest as the guest or the host on the show, their perception, their perspective of the world is different, completely different than your own. So there's nothing better than making new connections and then getting the ability to look at what you love in a different light from a different point of view. And that's one of the things guesting does. It helps you grow and expand your mindset. And like I said, like you say, make great connections and increase your exposure.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people miss out on, a lot of people, they think, I'm just going to borrow this. They see it as a stage. They see it as just the platform. And what we say is like, you're missing out, right? I feel personally, it's from the relationships that I've built with either as a host with the guest and as a guest with the host, right? It's the relationships that could open doors to opportunities you never even knew were there. So it's not just the listener, because, everything really about the podcast episode should be about the listener, but it's also about the relationship with a host or guest, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and if people want to check out your network, learn more about your services and how to be a better guest, what's the best way to connect with you, Karen?
The easiest thing, I do have I'll give it towards the end. If anybody's interested in being a guest on shows and doing it in a more of an intentional or strategic way, then I'll give you a link to my freebie at the end of the show, if you like.
Awesome. Then that link will be in the show notes. You'll have to wait till the end to get it. But if you're listening to the recording in the future, you can go down the show notes, check out Karen's links, check out Karen's Poduty and the Crew page over on the podcast website. Karen, are you ready to get into our stories?
I'm not sure. I don't know that I'm qualified for this. Live podcasting is new concept to me.
I think you're perfectly qualified for this. All your experience, all those things that you're prepping your guests for, those things apply to the stage. You still want to put a great show together. I think you're going to have some great perspectives, and you're really going to help the audience learn how to be more present as a guest, how to be more in the moment on stage. And I think we're going to have a great time over the next half hour.
Cool.
Here we go. We're going Big Pharma. Pharma is the second story, but Big Pharma, bigger stage, live from JPM, recorded live at the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference in San Francisco. The Stat podcast brought the boardroom to the microphone with a high-level sit-down featuring Novo Nordisk's new CEO and top biotech investors. The episode blended real-time industry news, leadership storytelling, and future-focused innovation. They covered everything from how an office clerk rises to CEO, to AI's growing role in biotech, to the battle for market share in the obesity drug space. It's a strong example of how live podcasting can turn major conferences into multi-listen media moments, delivering insight, credibility, and access that simply doesn't lend the same in a pre-recorded studio episode. And I think a lot of what we're seeing here is everything you probably teach about, Karen, about being in the moment, being on stage, being with people who are in the same industry, who share the same interests. And here they are at a conference. What better place to position yourself than in front of people who are probably your customers?
Absolutely. I mean, this is the first time I'm sort of seeing, I didn't realize this was going on, and it has. You've really made me think. My brain's been going, we like the opportunities here, I think, are massive, because it's very different going to an event and speaking on stage. Like that's what I started out doing, right? And I can honestly say I've never been so scared. It was the most petrifying experience of my entire life. Getting up on stage, and it's a very different concept because you have to, well, not everybody, I'm sure there's seasoned speakers that can just get up on stage and speak from the heart. But my first time, I felt like I had to learn my signature talk absolutely perfectly. I couldn't work the clicky thing at the same time, so the sound engineer had to help me. And so when I came into podcasting, it was so much easier because you are speaking from the heart. It's just conversations. So this is sort of combining the two things. I can see why podcasting live at an event, because you're not just reporting on the industry, you're actually inside it in the moment. So, there's the energy of the room, there's a whole buzz around it. And I think because it's live, you're really on your game, you're really sort of aware. Whereas I think when I do podcasts, right, I'm in the safety of my room where I am. I'm in the safety behind my computer and in the knowledge that if need be, I can edit. Whereas all of that's gone out the window at a live event. So it is completely, we talk about being authentic on a podcast. This is just taking it up to a whole other level, right?
Yeah, and this is something we're seeing more and more, where conferences are starting to use, instead of musicians or magicians or comedians as their entertainment, they're booking podcasts on the main stage now as to entertain the guests, maybe in between keynote speakers, maybe as a way to have a panel discussion in a new way, in a way that they can record it and promote it after the event. And the podcast that's going to appear on the stage, guess what they're also doing? They're promoting leading up to the event that they're going to be on the main stage. So we're seeing this as a great strategy for conferences. Start to incorporate the podcasts that are in their industry as part of the entertainment for the event.
Well, it's combining things. You're really sort of utilizing your time well, aren't you? Because you're creating content at the same time as building deeper relationships with the people who are actually in the room. They're going to be more involved, if you like, the more bought into you, right? That you're building on that trust factor. I think it's a great concept.
Yeah, and this little tweak, I find it much more rewarding as an attendee than a panel, than a Q&A. You're getting that interview, you're getting that insight in a different way than a panel delivers, because they're trying to record something for entertainment value to not just answer the questions, but entertain the audience and entertain the future listeners. I find live podcasting is a better structure for a conference than just a panel with a Q&A.
Yeah, love it.
Well, I said farmer on the first story. We're going to the farmer at this time for real, not Pharma. We're here in Pennsylvania. The Pennsylvania Farm Show returned with the Spark podcast, delivering live on-location coverage straight from the show floor, spotlighting the people behind Pennsylvania agriculture, from maple syrup producers and mushroom farmers to dairy leaders and alpaca educators. The podcast turned a massive in-person event into an accessible storytelling platform. By recording live conversations with farmers and producers, the Spark captured the passion, expertise, and innovation driving agriculture across the Commonwealth, proving that local events, when paired with live podcasting, can reach far beyond the fairgrounds and into homes, headphones, and communities statewide. And honestly, this was a place I never expected to see a live podcast. How about you, Karen?
Never would have given it a thought. But again, it's just going back to that whole, I think, perception thing. You know, you've got, I mean, I don't know, what are they talking about? Certain products. You could expand, again, it's introducing people to maybe things they've not thought of purchasing before. I mean, there's just so much you can go into. And it's, I presume, it's because it's local. It's these are local regional events. You know, you've got, you know, you might not have a massive stage, so you're bringing in the community maybe in a way, because the local shows are going to be packed with people who are passionate. I'm sure they're going to have incredible stories. They're not going to have the fluff. They're not going to, because they're not coming from that background. It's going to be even more authentic, I would have thought. You know, it's really going to be where the trust is built. And I suppose the mic just then becomes the bridge, if you like, between the actual community and the whole world, really, because it's broadcasting out to a larger area. I think it's a great way to do things.
Yeah, we think so much in this country of processed food, the industrialization of our food supply, and here's a chance to connect with the people who are growing the food. They're harvesting the maple syrup, they're raising alpacas. There's real people here, and you're getting to hear their stories and how much passion and care that they put into those products, that maybe the next time you go to the supermarket, maybe you don't reach for the box item, you reach for the thing in a mason jar with a handwritten label, because you know the face to that product now. It's somebody putting in their blood, sweat, and tears into producing this wonderful thing, whether it's, you know, honey or, you know, corn raised. I don't know how you raise corn. So, you know, there's some sort of, you know, there's a person there now. There's an expert behind the story of this product, and you get to share in that story now and share that story with your friends when you consume it.
Brilliant. And look, so I'm from England, right? So if you've ever heard of Jeremy Clarkson, now he has a show in the UK, and what he's done for farming has been probably more than anybody has done in the UK. So this is the idea of doing this, I think, would be awesome for where we are, especially for the organic, grass-fed, more family farms, because again, it humanizes, I suppose is the word. It humanizes the people behind the scenes, and it will you're going to attract more clients. I think it's just a great way to do things. And I've really never, ever thought about doing this before. I think this is something that could help the local, smaller businesses incredibly.
Yeah, if you have a client who maybe is an accountant, we've had stories where accountants have gone into cities to host workshops, and at the end of the workshop, they recorded their podcast with that city. So it's a great way to just connect the audience to your show in a way, in an environment that you don't get, you know, sitting in your home studio, sitting in your basement. You get to really go out there, tell the stories with the people who are out in the field, you know, making it happen.
Absolutely. And you're going to, because I would have thought within an event like that, you're really going to sort of turn the real niche topics into real compelling content, because it's human-centered storytelling, rather than, you know, what maybe some copywriters might tell them to put on a website. It's got to be, you know, it's different, isn't it? It's in a different way. This is definitely more humanized.
Yeah, really love it. And it's one of these stories that we file under places I never expected to see a podcast. And it was just so great. It's my home state. It's where I'm from in Pennsylvania. And to see live podcasting happening at the farm show, it just blew me away. And congratulations to the Spark for putting that all together.
Yeah, it's about the people, isn't it? It's all about the people behind the scenes. Great.
Speaking of people on this podcast, they're creating people. The Life Happens Live, podcasting Parenthood in real time. In a deeply personal live episode, the Kind of Funny podcast live, the host turned the mic inward for real life as Tim Geddes shared the final days leading up to becoming a father. From hospital visits and parenting anxieties to running jokes, pop culture moments, and emotional honesty, the episode showed how live podcasting thrives when hosts let audiences into unfiltered human moments. Rather than polished storytelling, this live show leaned into authenticity, proving that sometimes the strongest live podcast content isn't about news or strategy, but about being present, vulnerable, and connected with your community in real time. And I think you hit on this a little bit earlier on our first story, Karen, about how can you give yourself to the community? How can you be present for people in the moment when you're telling your story, telling your elevator pitch? How do you make that something that people can relate to? And I think this live stream was a really open and vulnerable conversation about becoming a parent, becoming a father, and just getting to share that personal moment with their audience.
I think this is massive, actually, because I feel that when people are going through this, I know that not that I went to a lot of these mother and child groups when I had my girls, or young parents can feel like it's only them that are going through this. It's only them that are feeling like this, because on the outer, when you see people outside, everybody's got it together. And then they maybe have feelings of guilt or shame because they're not. So having these honest conversations, and especially guys, I think that's it's great, because they're going to relate to people at home that might be, some might be going through that, others not. But the whole thing of that, it's being real, and they're talking about real issues rather than the polished exterior that you see maybe on social media, parents posting about their kids and they think they've got it all, it's all working really well. Well, why isn't my child going to sleep at a proper time and they're waking me up? So you're having natural conversations about the challenges that we all go through. It's just that most people don't get to sort of really see into that because they see the polished version. So I think it's really inclusive. And from a mental health point of view, I think that that could be a lifeline to people maybe who are having challenging moments, because they go, oh, okay, this is normal to feel like this. So yeah, again, great way, and to bring humor to it too.
Yeah, a side effect that when we opened this theater space here and people would do their show live, and it goes usually 90 minutes for a show, the longest part of the night is people actually leaving the theater. People hang out. They want to talk to the host. They want to thank them for an episode maybe they did a couple months ago and how it got them through a moment, and they just appreciate that storytelling. They were having a rough time, and it was a great episode. And we really do have trouble getting people out of the theater after shows, because there's such a connection between that vulnerability and sharing your experiences. Like you said, you think you're the only one going through that. Well, guess what? We all panic when we bring home the first child. We're like, the hospital's letting us just leave with a baby. Like, what are we supposed to do? And you don't know that because you're immersed in that moment. You don't realize that thousands of other people are feeling the same thing. And I think this, like you said, Karen, this is a great way to share those moments that we don't really talk about in public.
Absolutely. So when you open up about your life, not just your expertise, you're really inviting people to stay for the long haul. They're not just following your tips, they're following your whole journey. And that is what builds the kind of trust. Money, you can't buy that, right? And it is that balance between, you bring in humor, but also sort of responsibility and the real life storytelling in a live show. You can be the light, right? Without, you don't have to be shallow. You're just sharing stories with humor. That is going to help to reach people, and sharing them responsibly is going to help them help you keep them watching. I think it's great.
Yeah, if you have too many toddlers, they start bouncing around, they start wrestling everywhere. And that takes us to our next story about from fandom to front row, wrestling goes live. During WrestleMania weekend, Denise Salcido is taking podcasting out of the studio and straight to the fans with a live show at Circa Resort and Casino Las Vegas as part of Circa Mania. The 1-hour event blends a live podcast, special guests, audience Q&A, raffles, and a meet and greet, turning a major pop culture moment into an immersive ticketed experience. It's a great example of how podcasters can plug directly into large-scale events, activate fandom, and create real-world connections while still producing meaningful, monetized content. And this is something we were talking about earlier, piggybacking on current events, current conferences, things that are happening. Here's somebody who's a wrestler who's going to a wrestling event and hosting a wrestling podcast. Is there a better way to plug into your target market?
There you go. You've just got everything done in the same amount of time that the show was on. If people are already showing up every week to hear from you, why not give them a chance to, show up in person? Wrestling fans get it. They don't just want to watch. They want to be part of it. So a live podcast event, again, that just gives them that whole stage. So, yeah, podcasters could really tap into any sort of existing cultural moments, I suppose, create all sorts of events. This is, again, I've just never heard of this. What an absolutely brilliant idea. What a way to build that momentum, step into the moments that are already happening. Very different.
There's most likely, whatever your passion is, whatever your podcast is about, I guarantee you somewhere within a 50-mile radius is an event about that thing sometime during the year. You can always find some way to plug in or some way to connect with people. And this is the perfect trifecta of it's a wrestling podcast at a wrestling event where the wrestling fans are. Yeah, you couldn't be more targeted on April 12th or April, I can't read it, 17th, 2026. I should have my glasses on.
So are they interviewing the actual wrestlers?
Yeah, it says special guest, audience Q&A, raffles, and a meet and greet. So would be great to hear maybe some of the backstories to the storyline, like why are you fighting this guy? Who, what did he do to you? And why did he slash your tires or something? I don't know wrestling storylines, but why did he throw a pie in your face?
Again, that's really unique because people who watch sport, right, they don't get to see the athlete. They don't get to hear that much about the athlete. They might get interviewed by Sky News or whatever right at the end for a couple of minutes, but not to share stories and really get a little bit more of an insight into that particular person. It goes back to what I've said all the way throughout this episode. It's all about humanizing people because they just see this wrestler as they're a character, if you like. So you're bringing them in and you're hearing their stories. Again, I'm sure that's going to attract more fans, isn't it? Because they get to find out more about the athletes that are involved in the show, if you like.
Yeah, you're already there for the weekend for WrestleMania. This is probably preceding the show. You're going to get an extra event based on the reason why you're in Vegas. It's just a great way to tie in the weekend.
Yeah. Again, it's just, how to max out, get as much that you can get done in that time period and utilize it live. And then again, later that you can repurpose. And so you can get so much out of that one event.
Yeah. And getting so much out of an event, how about even when your local government gets involved and starts talking about the future of energy? And here we go at Enlit Europe 2025. The Port of Bilbao stepped into the spotlight during the EU Project Talk Live podcast, Energy and European Ports, turning complex policy and infrastructure conversation into accessible, real-time dialogue. Port President Ivan Jimenez used I did good on that. Jimenez uses the live platform to outline Bilbao's push toward electrification, renewable energy, and hydrogen innovation, while also challenging the European Union to reward ports that are actively investing in decarbonization. The episode shows how live podcasting is increasingly being used at global conferences to influence policy, shape narratives, and give leaders a direct voice in high stakes industry conversations. And we've been seeing this a couple times with some of the policy podcasts, some of the political podcasts, where they're doing this not just to have a conversation, but to also make it accessible to people that couldn't get there. Sometimes they live stream these or they record it for distribution so that they can make the public aware on a larger scale.
Well, I suppose these types of ones, it sounds like they're going for the more educational, going back to what I sort of said earlier about people's perceptions. So if something's going on in their area, so what was this, the port of Bilbao, the public might have a certain perception as to, oh, this is a good idea, this is a bad idea, and having a live podcast where, again, you're having these people have the conversation about it, to raise awareness about it, to educate people about it so they're more informed. So yes, I can see why that would be, I think they need to do that more in politics, but would the politicians turn up? Because maybe they won't want to be just showing up conversationally, because quite often I'm sure our lot just want to sort of prepare a speech that has been handwritten to them. Oh, I shouldn't get into politics, but I think it would be a good idea because, again, it's more real, it's raw, and they can't fake it.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of times you don't want to go on the record with how you really feel, especially when your donors.
It could backfire. It could backfire.
Yeah. But as far as producing a podcast for something that needs a discussion in the public, making it accessible for more people to attend that wouldn't be able to get here, that part of this is another thing to consider when doing your show live. Is how can you increase accessibility? How can you put something out that's important for people to hear and give people more opportunities to hear it, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on.
Yeah. Well, it gives everybody the opportunity to make an informed decision, a more informed decision, rather than their own bias, if you like, before that conversation. So it's got to be a good thing.
Well, speaking of good things, we couldn't have a week go by without talking about CES, the Consumer Electronics Show. It's all over the news, all over the media. Every story has something about CES, and human-led AI takes the live stage at CES. And this was recorded live at CES 2026. A bonus episode of the CMO podcast brought listeners directly into the heart of the AI and creativity conversation with Yannick Boulor, chairman and CEO of Havas. Broadcasting from the C-Space stage at Consumer Electronics Show, the live discussion focused on how brands can embrace AI at scale without losing the human judgment, empathy, and creativity that define meaningful marketing. The episode highlights how live podcasting at major innovation events isn't just reporting on the future, it's actively shaping the conversation in real time. And every year, CES is the center of the conversation. Everything that's going to happen in the next year, the next 2 years, you get to see the future of technology. And here they are on stage discussing where do they think it's going? What are some things that are going to roll out in the next year or two?
Interesting. Because I think there's two camps, is there? Some that are for AI and some that are very fearful of it. So maybe, within this world, I suppose it could be filled with, there's lots of buzzwords, whereas having a live podcast can cut through all of that and give people a little bit of clarity. It's talking about, well, then they're not there to pitch stuff. Tech can get very complicated, can't it? So going back to, I think my favorite word of today is humanizing. It humanizes the tech, and it can position you as just a real voice in that space. And sort of dissolve maybe some of the fears that people have about AI. And again, it's because it's a conversation rather than a scripted speech that could have been created by AI. It's combining the two. We've got to come together. Look, we use AI after the event, right? Now I think, oh my goodness, how did I do this prior to having AI? Because I can take the transcription, I've created my own like custom trained chat GPT. So I've taught it because I want it to deliver it in a certain way. And at the click of a button, I can put the transcription in. It's created my show notes, a blog post for me, a blog post for my guest, social media posts for me, social media posts as though they've been written from my guest. At the click of a button. I think some people are fearful of it. So having these live podcasts, I think, are really, really important, again, to inform and to create clarity around it. And that, I think if you're not going to, you need to embrace it. Don't be fearful of it. I think it's a good thing, but everyone's going to have their own opinion about it. And it goes back to the fact that it is going to educate, so the people listening to the podcast, again, can come to an informed decision themselves. Again, I think it's a very clever way of getting your message out there.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know, and conversations like this bring to the forefront where AI is going, the technology that they're building. I think during this particular session, they took a picture of somebody from the audience, they uploaded it, and then 20 minutes later, their system made a movie about her. So, that's some of the things that are coming down the pipeline and with content creation. And you decide what you want to do. If you want to fully immerse your life in AI, you can do that. If you want AI to assist you and use AI as to become a superhuman, use it as a superpower, you can really enhance the things that you create. If you want to just keep it real, if you want to do real life events on stages like this and just be one-on-one conversations with people, you can do that. You can dial up or down the amount of AI that you want to use. And when you learn about it, you don't have to be fearful about the unknown. You can have a meaningful dialogue, a conversation with people, and figure out what's the best use for this for you.
Absolutely. And I think so many people get caught up. They're still using it as though it's Google. They're just asking it questions like we did before we would type into Google. And it's being aware that it can do so much more. It's not necessarily a negative. It's not a negative. Oh, well, I don't see it. Again, everyone's got their own opinion of this, which is fine. But I think, embrace it. I think it's a good thing when used correctly. I think again the fear comes from the unknown and the possibilities of what it can do that is negative. And there have been films made in the past about the future of these things, and they never ended well, did they?
Nope. Well, Karen, this brings us all the way back to our main slide. And we were talking before, you're like, I haven't done live before. I've never done a live. And you knocked it out of the park. Your experience, everything that you've delivered today was phenomenal. And you added so much to the conversation. I thank you so much for joining me. And now everybody's been waiting. We want to hear the magic link that you're going to send us.
Oh, well, this is really just for, I would say, if there's anybody out there, and I tend to focus on coaches and consultants. So if there's anybody that has been thinking about guesting on podcasts as a way to sort of grow their business this year, then I do have a gift for you. Now, this is normally exclusively for paid clients, but for your listeners, you can get access to my 4-part mini course. It's called the Podcast Profits Funnel. But there's a caveat to that, I'm giving it to you free. So you would need to complete it in 5 days and complete the short assignments. And if you do, you'll get the reward video that you can't get anywhere else. It is a part of my $5,000 offer, and that is how to automate your sales. So if you're a coach and you're tired of doing sales calls, you don't like sales, or you don't want to waste time doing no shows, then maybe this would be a good idea for you. So go to podcastprofitsunleashed.com. So that's podcastprofitsunleashed.com/free.
Awesome. Karen, thank you again so much. I got a slide to go through. I got shirts. If you're ever in the theater, come get a Poduty shirt, $10. Hats too. But more importantly, everything that we talked about, all these live events that are happening around the world, we want to do that here in Pittsburgh. We have a little stage, a little theater space. Why don't you try it out? There's no contract, no minimum ticket sales. We just split the door at the end of the night. I'll facilitate the ticket sales. I'll build you a landing page. I'll record and produce the event for you. It's impossible to say no to this offer. Check it out, poduty.com, PODUTY.com, which means I only have one more question for you, Karen. What time is it?
It's showtime.
What time is it? What time is it?